Dude, never did it.
Oh, I told my friend Bob we were doing this podcast, and that we called it "Never Did It," and he was like, he goes, "Dude, that." Yep. Yep. There are two other people in my life who know Goldfinger, so besides you.
I don't know anyone else. I tried to play it for Annie. I don't remember why I tried playing it like when we were out, and she was like, "This is really embarrassing. Don't do this now."
It is. You can't. You just can't. Like I played Megan's Stories from like Todd Snyder and stuff. Like, and those are funny, but like this gold, like I don't know. There's just something about hearing it at the time that you just can't recreate.
Really, for sure. Also, it's just so funny because I watched Young Frankenstein.
Yeah.
And that's where Abby Normal comes from. And I was like,
that's
oh
right.
My God.
Yeah, that's right.
It blew my mind.
I remember you sending me that now, yeah.
So I'm going to leave that in as the intro.
Okay.
This is the podcast Never Did It.
Yeah.
Where I'm Brad Garoon. I'm here with my super close, longtime best friend, Jake Ziegler. We're just two guys who like movies, but there's a ton of them we haven't seen. Even though we've seen Jake, how many movies? If you look on your Letterboxd account,
sure. Let me pull
how
that
many
up.
movies have you seen?
Right.
I mean, I know it's just according to Letterboxd. It's obviously
right. Yeah. So it's going to be a little bit. 5,244.
You've seen more than twice as many as I have.
Yeah.
2,494.
Oh, wow, okay.
And obviously that includes like shorts and some limited series and things like that. But
yep.
like, yeah, we've seen a lot of movies. Jake, you've seen too many movies.
Yeah. Well, I used to work at video stores and movie theaters, so they were very, very accessible to me for a number of years.
And as a newspaper film critic for a short time.
That as well, yes.
I wanted to have a little bit more purpose to the movies that I was watching. Last year, I did one movie for every day of the year based on like someone who was born that day or died that day or a holiday from that day. And then since that ended, it's just been a free-for-all. So I suggested to Jake that we go back over the last 100 years and each pick a movie from each one of the last 100 years that the other hadn't seen and assign it to that person, to the other person. So that's the conceit of this show. We are going to, and it's not going to be in order, chronologically, I mean. Sometimes there might be episodes that connect to each other. Like, I believe this one and the next one we air will be connected in some way. But in general, it might feel a little random because we didn't want to just watch 15 silent movies and then chronologically like that. So today, we're starting with the year 2013. Let's start, Jake, with the movie that I assigned to you, which was In a World.
Yeah, why don't you say what made you suggest that one for me?
I love this movie. I saw this in theaters. In a World is a comedy. Obviously came out in 2013. Written, directed by, and starring Lake Bell. It's about voice actors. So Lake Bell plays Carol Solomon, who comes from a voice acting dynasty. Her father is a famous voice actor. And the movie uses the real-life conceit of, what's his name?
Don LaFontaine.
Don LaFontaine. The trailer godfather, Don LaFontaine, has passed away, which really happened a few years before this movie came out. And there's a vacuum in the voiceover trailer, or the trailer voiceover world. Specifically over who gets to be carry on the legacy of the words In a World. Which, no, there's not really voiceover in trailers anymore in real life. But that's sort of like the conceit of the movie, that they're going to bring it back because it helps get across the epic nature of film. And the movie is just like a really light comedy about a bit of competition in this world and also about this woman's life and her family's life. It stars Lake Bell, Fred Melamed, Dimitri Martin, Michaela Watkins, Rob Corddry, Ken Marino. It's really fun. And the reason that I suggested Jake watch it is because I think this is like one of the great sleeper comedies of the last decade that a lot of people didn't see because I'm pretty sure it only got a limited theatrical run.
That's true.
And Lake Bell's directing career did not take off after this happened. So I've just always wanted you to watch it because you're also, Jake, you have a daughter.
Yes.
You watch a lot of cartoons. So you have, and you've said to me in the past, you believe that voice acting, and I also believe this, is a a really under-respected profession.
Right. The fact that they don't have a category for it at the Oscars has been a bone of contention. I mean, not just from me, but I think there's a pretty solid movement behind that. So yeah, definitely underappreciated skill.
So what, did you know anything about this movie before I asked you to watch it?
I did, yeah. It's certainly been on my radar for a while. I like Lake Bell, and it definitely seemed the kind of movie that would be up my alley. So I was really glad that you suggested it, because it like sometimes I get kind of lost and don't have any purpose to the movies I watch. So it's just nice to have someone finally say yes, now is your time. Watch this movie. So yeah, I did know about it. I knew it was about voiceovers. I did not know, however, that Cy Abelman was in the movie, and I get a little PTSD every time I see him, because he's just such a rotten human being, and that was But I certainly got over that. Yeah, so I knew about it, and I was really excited to get a chance to finally watch it.
So Cy Abelman is played by Fred Melamed.
Yeah.
Who I actually think I have a ton of notes about this.
Cool.
I have a ton of questions to ask you about it.
Cool.
Fred Melamed is everywhere. It's funny that you get PTSD because I used to do, and I guess I still do if they ever do more episodes, a podcast about the television show Adventure Time with our buds Kevin Ford and Justin Houston. And Fred Melamed came in and voiced the final villain for the last few episodes, and he's real evil in that show. But he also just is sort of popping up everywhere as sort of the low key go to Jewish dad in things. So I just saw him in a movie. Well, he didn't play a Jewish dad in this movie per se, but I just saw him in Together, this Ed Helms so-called comedy that is not a comedy, but is completely... Did you see it?
Yeah, didn't like it. Did not like it at all.
I didn't dislike it, except that I felt betrayed by the description of it as a comedy.
Yeah.
It's not funny. It's not... I didn't think it was bad, but it's not funny. Anyway, but Fred Melamed, actually, his brief scene in it is very funny. And he also popped up recently in Shiva Baby, where he plays the dad, which is a very Jewish story. Anyway, he's fantastic.
Yes.
Do you actually have trouble seeing him as a sympathetic character? Because in this, he's I guess the antagonist, but he's not so bad.
He's got his issues. He certainly is not a perfect father, or even a scrupulous businessman at some point. I mean, he totally undercuts his own daughter. Just for himself, because he can't handle anyone, even his own daughter. He couldn't handle anyone getting that spot above him. So yeah, he's a little rough around the edges, but he's not quite Cy Abelman. Let's not say something we can't take back here.
And what's your exposure to Lake Bell aside from this?
I've seen. I was trying to think of other movies I've seen her, because I know I've seen her in a handful of things. She was on that show Children's Hospital, which I used to watch when that was on. I thought that was really funny.
It's interesting that you bring up Children's Hospital. I hadn't thought of that. I did not watch that show, but that also explains most of the cast of this movie.
Almost everyone, yeah.
They're all I think Michaela Watkins was in Children's Hospital. I know Rob Corddry was. I know Ken Burger was. So it's interesting. I know her from this. I mean, this is the first thing that. Well, she also played the other woman.
Something's Got to Give. I remember seeing her in that.
There it is. She plays, I think, Alec. Doesn't she play Alec Baldwin's wife in Something's Got to Give? No, not that. I'm thinking of.
It's Complicated.
That's It's Complicated.
Yeah, and Something's Got to Give. She's Jack Nicholson's young girlfriend.
Right, and I think she's Alec Baldwin's girlfriend in It's Complicated.
Yep, that sounds right.
She has Something's Got to Give. So she also, in real life, does a lot of voice work. Right now, she's the voice of Poison Ivy, which is the second lead in the Harley Quinn show on HBO Max. And she does a voice. She's one of the lead voices, I think, in Secret Life of Pets.
Yep, she is.
And
seen those a number of times.
Right. Oh, but I think a lot of people know her. She was in Wet Hot American Summer. I don't think the original, but she was in 10 Years Later. Wet Hot American Summer did 2 sequels. They did the prequel movie, and they did the sequel series. And she plays the girl that one of the characters has a crush on. Anyway, I think everyone should have a crush on her. She's crazy.
She's great, yeah.
She's so funny. She's so likable in this movie. And I thought she did the flighty, not ditzy, because she's very smart, but she's the flighty, not so serious about her life character without making it too juvenile. In the beginning of the movie, I'm like, oh, she's wearing a plaid skirt. She's gonna be like every guy's college fantasy. And then that's not it. She's kind of gross, and she does not have it together, and she really doesn't know how to communicate how she's feeling in any way.
But comparatives to a character like something like Seth Rogen in Knocked Up, just way more juvenile and way more kind of obnoxious than her character here.
Right. She's motivated. She wants to do a good job. She just doesn't really believe in herself. And she doesn't have a lot of people getting her back. And that's one of the other things I really liked about this movie is the movie is about her career. It's a rom-com that's not really about the rom.
Barely, yeah.
Yeah. So Dimitri Martin plays her love interest. That doesn't kick off until the end of the movie. And at first I was like, I do not buy him in this role. And then as the movie goes on, I'm like, the role didn't ask much of him. Right. He was able to accomplish the little bit that it asked him. What did you think about, did it go the way you expected? Did you like the fact that it was more about her relationship with her dad and less about her relationship with Dimitri Martin?
Definitely. I mean, I think that's a dynamic that doesn't get explored a lot, is father and daughter. And of course, that's something I respond to. Like I said, I've got a 10-year-old daughter, so it's obviously not the same dynamic because she's not an adult. But father-daughter stuff is interesting to me, and it's certainly more so than, I mean, there's a billion rom-coms out there, and there are a lot of good ones too, even if they don't necessarily do anything new or fun. And this one's kind of like that. It doesn't really do anything new. It's just a little bit different. Like, how many movies have we seen where the people work, they work at a restaurant or something like that? It's like, when was the last movie you saw about voiceover actors?
Never.
Right, I can't think of another one. So yeah, it's just a look at a different world, and the father-daughter thing certainly not as explored as like a mother-daughter relationship. So fathers, there's a million father-son movies. So yeah, it just felt fresh and different. I mean, even it came out 10 years ago, but it still feels like it could have come out this summer.
For sure. I was just watching Ride the Eagle. I turned it off so we could do this, but that's about a mother-son relationship, and there's plenty of movies about sons who have troubles with their mother too. Mm-hmm. There's really not a lot about fathers and daughters, and it's actually the thing that I responded to a lot in that Amy Schumer show that came out this summer that I can't remember what it's called at all, but it was on Hulu. But there's a few episodes where she has to deal with her dad, like he comes in to help her, and he's played by Michael Rappaport. And these are two actors who I actually don't care for, but they did a great job with this father-daughter dynamic. And I thought Fred Melamed and Lake Bell did too. Another thing I really liked about it, and I wonder if you picked up on this, was that there was no real meltdown comeuppance moment in this movie where the main character has to come clean about something they did wrong, which is in every comedy.
Yeah.
I just saw that movie Vengeance with BJ Novak over the weekend, or last weekend, and it's like a solid movie. It's a little messy, but there's a scene, and I was just waiting for it the whole movie, where he has to come clean about some stuff. And I love that this movie just doesn't have that.
No, not at all. There's no great big lesson. It's just she gets something good for working hard. It's not she's just doing the same thing she does through the whole movie.
Right. We finally have a protagonist who just you can get behind because she's doing the right thing the whole time. And what's interesting is they let some of the side characters do some of that other heavy lifting. Like Michaela Watkins plays Lake Bell's sister, and she, spoiler alert for a 9-year-old movie, had a light affair. She didn't she made out with a person that she worked with and cheated on her husband, and then she has to somehow, or Lake Bell wants to help reconcile that relationship, and that relationship has to get pulled together too. But at no point do they have a big fight scene where they come together. It happens in a funny, organic, original way. Understated,
really understated. Yeah, there's no big when Rob Corddry finds out. Yeah, there's no big drama to it, but his reaction seems appropriate,
right. And they never make him into what I really like too is they don't make him into the asshole. Where it's so easy and I think so tempting to make the person, whoever they are, the person who is wronged, react so poorly that they are now also wrong. He always maintains the high ground and also never rubs it in her face because in the end, it is still him coming back to her. So really, you get to leave this movie feeling good about everyone because it's just a comedy. You don't have to kill ourselves over a comedy. And I think that's where a lot of modern comedies, some of which just aren't funny, are taking the wrong step. Have you seen other good comedies come out recently that aren't action comedies or animated comedies?
Action comedies or animated comedies? Boy, that's a really good question. We were just on Hulu earlier today, so I was reminded of Vacation Friends, which is not super funny, but at least it's not also trying to be an action movie or trying to be something else. It's trying to be just a comedy, or something like maybe Blockers would probably fit into that category too.
Both of those movies, I like them both. It's funny that you brought up two John Cena movies because he's very good at comedy.
Yeah, one came right after the other. Yeah.
I actually like both of those. It's funny though because both of those scenes they're not action comedies, but they both have like pretty big action set pieces in them.
That's true. Big car crash and blockers. Yeah.
Yeah, and a big like hang gliding stuff and
Oh yeah.
I just watched. I went down a Hulu comedy rabbit hole after watching In a World. I watched I Want You Back, which got good reviews from earlier this year. It's with Jenny Slate and
Yeah.
Charlie Day, and then Manny Jacinto has a cameo in it. It's pretty good, but even that has like a pretty. I wouldn't call it a big action set piece. It just has a scene where Charlie Day has to do something very physically demanding. But that movie just came out. These movies don't come out in theaters anymore. These non-action, non-animated comedies, which I think is so interesting, and it's such a bummer because laughing in a theater with other people is such a fun thing, and it's not a thing anymore. Even In a World got a very limited release. I saw this when it came out at a theater that no longer exists, the Sunshine Cinema in New York City, and Lake Bell and her husband were serving popcorn at the show. It was such a cool experience, and that wouldn't happen now. The movie would just come out on Hulu.
Yeah, stuff like that especially never plays up. I mean, I live in a really small town, so just stuff like that never plays up here anymore. You know, it has to be something like a big tentpole.
Did you wind up getting Marcel the Shell up by you?
Not yet. It is on my art theater. There's a theater up in Harbor Springs. It is on their coming soon page, but it's not been confirmed yet. So I think it means he's trying to get it, but he hasn't confirmed it yet. But it's on his radar at least. So.
All right, well, that's good.
Yeah.
Two quick things about In a World that I wanted to mention.
Yeah.
One, if you're on the fence about watching it, although I don't know why you would be, it's really short. It's a really easy watch. If you're into like the 40-Year-Old Virgin or Knocked Up or any of the like early Apatow movies or like earlier Seth Rogen stuff, like Jake mentioned, it's like that but less juvenile. But it has a bit of that vibe. Really free-flowing, natural. These people are just funny because they're around each other kind of vibe. So it's fun to watch. Like Tig Notaro has a great cameo in this where she gets to be like deadpan and very funny. Mm-hmm. And who's the dude who plays Ron Swanson in Parks and Rec?
Oh, Nick Offerman, yeah. Oh god, he only has like 4 lines and they're all funny.
They're all funny.
Yeah.
And Dimitri Martin, what I really like about his thing too is he doesn't do Dimitri Martin. He's not deadpan. He is emoting quite a bit.
Oh yeah. Like the one scene where he's like dancing on the sidewalk, just trying to get her attention or whatever. Like it's just so awkward and kind of endearing, and yeah, he kind of won me over.
Yeah, I was worried about him a little bit, but this was good for him. I think you asked me was it you who asked me what happened? Or I think maybe my fiance asked me what happened.
I think I asked it because I was thinking about this movie.
He's one of the lead voices in the show We Bare Bears, which is I imagine it's still running on Cartoon Network, but that's like a pretty big show by Cartoon Network standards. So he's getting work, and it's funny that it's voice work.
Of course. Yeah.
As far as this goes. But yeah, So I would say I gave this 4 stars on Letterboxd. I rewatched it, gave it 4 stars again. I think it's worth it.
I also gave it 4 stars. Yeah, it's just a really good comedy, really solid, and I mean it's very rewatchable. I think too. Like I didn't watch it with Megan, my girlfriend. And we'll probably watch it again because I think she'd really like it too.
All right, why don't you tell us a bit about Act of Killing? What is it about, and why'd you make me watch it?
Absolutely. Well, the Act of Killing, and I didn't get a chance to rewatch it, so I don't have as many notes or questions as you had on In a World, because if anybody knows this movie, it is certainly not as imminently rewatchable as something like In a World. But the Act of Killing, it's a documentary film by a guy named Josh Oppenheimer, and what he did is he went to Indonesia. And he met with a bunch of death squad leaders, basically, and they staged reenactments of the mass killings that they actually perpetrated in real life. And he's restaged them and filmed them and had them watch the scenes of what they had done. Number one, how do you even get an idea like that, and how do you psych yourself up to make something like that and to live something like that for years? And documentary films are, it's not, it's not like In a World where you get a good 45 to 90 day shoot and you're done. I mean, this was, years of his life that he did. And I picked it for you because I think it's one of the best documentaries I've ever seen. And I saw it when it first came out, and I haven't, it hasn't lost any of its effect on me when I think about it.
So this movie is disgusting, and I don't mean that as an insult in any way. It's a tough hang. First off, I was reminded so much of the phrase, and I really should have looked this up, and I feel stupid for not knowing it offhand who said it, but how the real crime here is the banality of evil. How just casually, these guys talk about these crimes they committed, how eager they were to reenact them, how much they talked about how much it reminded them, how they were inspired by gangster movies. The main guy, Anwar Congo, he was sort of like the focal point of the movie. He could not stop talking about how he was inspired by gangster movies, and it must have been gangster movies of the 60s because that's when this happened, this mass killing of communists in Indonesia, of communists, of ethnic Chinese. There are estimates anywhere from 300,000 to 2.5 million people were killed during these killings. This is serious genocide that is not well known by Westerners. And the current regime, the regime that did that, is still in power. They were inspired by gangster movies of the 60s to choke people to death with wire. And they reenacted how they would choke people to death with wire over and over and over again throughout this movie. They came off as stoogey idiots who are well respected in their communities, which is so disturbing. I mean, I'm glad you told me to watch it. I don't feel good after having watched it. It's tough.
It's astonishingly difficult. Like it almost feels like this can't be actually happening. Like these people can't be real. But I mean, right. It's as real as it gets, and it shakes you. Yeah.
And there's very little reflection on their part about what they did. There's some, and it's also fascinating. So you have at one point Anwar and one of his friends that he did the killings with in the 60s are reunited at one point in the movie, actually pretty early on. And they have very different philosophies about how they feel about what happened. Anwar talks about the nightmares he has, and he thinks it's evil spirits or karma coming to get him. He actually sort of feels, I think he knows he's close to death. He has since died. And I think at the time he was feeling close to death, he was in his mid to late 60s at the time. You see him dyeing his hair a few different times throughout the movie, so his mortality is clearly on his mind. And he has a pretty dramatic reaction to watching the film at the end. He starts dry heaving. He clearly is unsettled by this, although it becomes a little bit hard to know if he's doing it for the camera or not. Whereas his friend is completely guilt-free. He's he actually thinks that Anwar is mentally weak for having these thoughts. He thinks he needs to go see a psychiatrist because the psychiatrist can give him something to calm his nerves and make him feel better about what he's done. And then you see the modern leaders of these goon squads. First off, the way they think about women is totally subhuman. At one point, one guy criticizes another woman's genitalia in front of her. And he's the leader. He's a big political leader in the country. My only criticism of this movie is it's real long. It's over 2.5 hours long.
That's weird. So I just looked it up on IMDb and it says 1 hour, 57 minutes. So they are wrong.
No, it's whatever the cut is on Hulu is over 2 hours, 2.5 hours. Mm-hmm. No, not Hulu. Is it on? Oh yeah, it is.
I wonder if it's a different. I wonder if it is a different cut then.
It may
be curious to find out. Yeah.
And if there is a shorter cut, I think I would have liked to have seen it because a lot of the movie it's beautifully shot.
Yes.
There are locales in Indonesia where they're doing the reenactments of the movie. Also, it's so funny. You get a clear sense that Oppenheimer does not respect the subjects,
clearly,
which is good. He's respectful of them to their face, but he confronts them with difficult questions. They like him. It's very clear that they like him and that the fame that he'll give them. Mm-hmm. But he does not respect them. There's one part where I forget the goon's name, but one of the current local leaders of this militia, he runs for local office and loses badly, and you just see how he bumbles his way through his terrible campaign. Mm. You see him brushing his teeth at one point and drooling all over his chest and stomach and gagging himself. These people are shown in a terrible light, and they don't care because they are so well respected in their community. I think it's northern Sumatra or southern Sumatra, but that bit's wild. Comparing what's happening in Indonesia, or what they're called, the Pancasila Youth is the name of the group. So that does sound a little bit like Proud Boys. And when you think about I think it's fully 1% of the population of Indonesia is in this group. Imagine if 1% of the population of the United States, a full 1%, a full 3 million people were in a white nationalist paramilitary group in the United States. We would live in an entirely different kind of culture, and that is what people live like in Indonesia, or at least in these regions in Indonesia, where at one point they show them going around to a market and bullying ethnic Chinese people out of their money. I would recommend the movie, but just know it's a tough hang, and just the fact that this stuff, it should, first off, it's a warning to what could go wrong anywhere, and it's a real tough look at what's going on over there.
definitely. And I did look it up actually. The version on Vudu is 122 minutes. So I think, I don't know, Hulu got like an extra, got like a different cut or something. I didn't know. I didn't know about that.
Well, I guess I should have just watched it on Vudu. But I mean, like, yeah. So then do that. Watch it on Vudu.
Oh yeah,
That'll
yeah.
be-
2 hours 39 minutes on Hulu, 122 on Vudu. Strange. Never knew that.
Yeah. So if you want to get like real deep into this, watch it on Hulu. If you want to have like a more streamlined version, watch it on Vudu. We both obviously recommend it.
It's not an easy one, and it's like I said, it's not one. I mean, it's 10 years on, and as soon as you started saying all those things, I have it. I think I saw it once, maybe twice back then. But as soon as you started saying all these things, like I remembered all of it, like The Wire and everything. And yeah, we had a friend who would probably describe it as haunting.
It is haunting. So there you go, Sam. There you go. It's haunting. Funny, weird, totally random connection between In a World and The Act of Killing that we did not know before we chose these movies. But Lake Bell and Josh Oppenheimer, the director of both movies, shared the Breakthrough of the Year award at the 2014 Spirit Awards. So that's pretty crazy.
That is neat.
These movies could not be more different.
Not at all. Yeah, I mean, good opposite ends of every spectrum you can think of.
All right, well, that does it for the first episode of Never Did It. We'll be back with, I think, what year did Oppenheimer's follow-up come out?
2015.
So we'll be back. We're going to skip 2014, go right to 2015. We'll get back to 2014 sometime. And the next episode that we put out of this podcast will be 2015. Thanks for sticking with us.